So, Georgia, I am so excited to have you. I would love for you to start off and tell us where it all began, the beginning of your adult life and to your modeling journey.
Yeah, of course. Nice. Thank you for having me. I basically grew up in Australia. So I was born in the UK. We moved to Australia when I was super young, grew up in Australia, and then moved to America pursuing modeling. So how I ended up in America is kind of a funny story. I was like modeling slash working four jobs, and then Sports Illustrated kind of found me on Instagram.
I love it.
That was like the beginning of it all. And now I've been in America for almost 10 years. And I'm trying really hard to hold on to my accent because everyone's teasing me saying I sound American, which is a problem.
I hear the accent loud and clear. I love a good Aussie accent.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah. So, and I've been modeling here for about 10 years. I kind of went through this huge shift of kind of had like a whole health breakdown in 2018 that I realized that was connected to my modeling and a toxic relationship and everything together. And then I kind of moved into trying to find what my passion was. And I think so many of us go through this stage in our life where we're like, what is my purpose? What is my passion?
100%.
Right. And it can be so disheartening because you're like, for me anyway, I'm very multi-passionate. So I would always put myself into a box and be like, you have to find something you're good at and something you're passionate about, and you have to stick to it, right? And
Yeah,
I never felt that way. I was like, I'm passionate about so many things. How am I ever going to find my quote purpose? And that was kind of how my health journey actually kind of handed me my purpose. And that's what's so cool about it is in the moment and for the years that it went on for, it was exhausting and like I just wouldn't wish it on anybody. But being able to reflect now and be like, wow, this challenge in my life like handed me what I was meant to do, for a kind of
yes.
this period. Like that is just the coolest thing ever. And now I'm just riding that wave, and it's been such an awesome kind of like integration of all my passions.
That's super beautiful to hear. You were talking to, I feel like it's like a mirror because I started my career off similarly, and my health issues gave me my passion and purpose. So it's
Yeah.
funny because you don't see it at the time, but when you step out of it, you're like, damn, I'm glad that happened because it did XYZ. Everything is divine. So I would love to hear, obviously, you mentioned, you felt that modeling gave you some of these health issues and you felt that the toxic relationship, if you wouldn't mind expanding on that, I would love to hear like the link and correlation that you were able to make.
Totally. So I was 20 years old from like a small town in Perth, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just like riding this wave of being like, oh my gosh, I get to go travel the world. This is wild, right? And I ended up meeting this guy in LA who ended up being a long-term partner of mine. He was from the UK, so we moved to the UK together. But the relationship was just really, really toxic. And I was so young and so naive. I was like from Perth, and I was like, everyone's nice and I can make everybody nice. And he has these problems and like he's going through these things, but like I can fix it and I can make him, I can mold him, as we do when we're young. We're like,
Sounds
I
like being
fix
female.
you. Yeah, I can fix you and I can help. And like, I'm gonna be the person that like really installs your faith in women and like, my loyalty and my love, right? And then basically like 2 years went on. I was modeling full time. I just shot Sports Illustrated. I did 120 flights in a year. I had like my agents didn't give a fuck about me, like did not care at all. I was just being like a ping pong ball. It was like who can make the most money off of this girl. And it wasn't until like I had one agent in LA who actually was like, okay, I sent like an SOS email. Basically, my dad had open heart surgery. He's like my best friend.
Oh,
My ex cheated on me. It was all over the news. I was like so burnt out. I had been traveling like a psycho, and I ended up just like sending an SOS email to all my agencies, and I didn't get any responses apart from
come
one.
on.
And the email, like I'm never vulnerable and I never reach out. And this is what's so scary and about being vulnerable and opening your heart was I just was like, hey guys, like I'm not handling life. And like I just need a pause button and I just need some support. I don't have any family on the other side of the world. And it was only really heard by one guy, and I ended up firing everyone else. I left everybody. I was
Wait,
like,
I have the chills. That's so awful. They just
awful,
treated you like a cash cow.
literally. So I was like, okay, I'm out of here. So I left everyone and kind of like started my life over. But at that, so a month after that happened, I ended up in the hospital. So I was like fresh out of a breakup. I, had like not been able to work. I came down with like cystic acne, started losing half of my hair. My dad was like recovering from his massive surgery. I just was a mess. I was an absolute mess and had like no support system around me. And this was really the unraveling of my health. And
Oh
what's
my
so
gosh.
interesting now for listeners that like maybe don't know me or my journey, I'm a traditional Chinese herbalist and practitioner now. So
I love it.
it's so cool looking back at my whole journey and realizing, like, oh my gosh, you got a lump in your breast because that's the liver channel, which is connected to like your stress and all the anger and all the resentment you're holding on to.
Yes.
Like, you had all of these gut issues because you literally couldn't digest the shit that was happening in your life. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
It's all very like simulation-y, like very like on the nose.
Yeah, 100%. And that was when I really like I hit my rock bottom. I was super depressed. I have a tattoo on my finger. It says sunshine
Oh, I
because I'm
love
like,
that.
remember your sunshine. It was always my nickname.
Oh,
It's like in a hole at this time in my life, right? And I ended up spending like most of the money I made modeling on trying to fix my health in America.
yeah. Good luck.
Good luck, which is hilarious, right? And I just was going doctor to doctor and like no one could help. And I was really at rock bottom. I really was. I had like cystic acne, chronic urinary tract infections. I had every food intolerance that came out of nowhere under the sun. I had really bad rosacea. So every time I'd go in the sun, my whole face would burn. My skin was like flaking off. I lost over half my hair in like 3 months. Chronic UTIs, like you name it, it was all going on for me. And I just was like, I got into that victim mindset where I was like, what did I do to deserve this?
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
I stayed there feeling sorry for myself for like the whole year. I was trying to find some help and didn't find any. And then I met this amazing Chinese medicine doctor, and I just was like, you know what?
Where were they?
They were in LA in Pacific Palisades. And I was like, I'm just gonna give this a go. It's so woo-woo because I didn't know anything about holistic
Yeah.
medicine. And I was like, but you know what? I'm at rock bottom. I'll try anything. And then from that moment, I just knew I was in the right place. I burst into tears and I just felt so held. And within 3 months, like everything wasn't fixed. It's not a magic pill, but I
No.
started like seeing light at the end of the tunnel and feeling myself coming back into my body. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. I have to study this. So then I literally went to school for 3.5 years to study the ins and outs of Chinese herbal medicine. And that's what I do now, which is so amazing. And then literally there's been a whole unraveling of health stuff since then. But I guess like the main point of what you were saying is it's crazy how our mental, emotional, spiritual experience, relationship breakdowns, toxic breakdowns, all of this, like the people you are around, you become. Like I had become this like anxious, depressed version of myself as a reflection of him, right? And then like you add your work and it's like no one cares about you, so you're not caring about yourself. And then you just like it's like a spiral, right? You just become a mirror of all of these things that just don't resonate with you. And then you kind of have to rebuild yourself from the bottom up. And it was really hard. And my health journey went on for like 4 years, but it's been the most rewarding, beautiful, incredible thing that's ever happened to me, even with like all the days I spent crying and struggling. So
Oh my God, I love this so much. And no, it's crazy. Your outer world 100% reflects your inner world. And it's crazy. I'm like on the part of healing's not linear, as you know. We're
yeah.
constantly healing, but I'm at that phase of my journey where I see how everything connects, kind of like what you went through. And all these moments connect and it starts to unravel. And you could, do all the Chinese medicine, diets, holistic things in the world, but if you don't start to focus about, mentally in these relationships and do the inner work, all this stuff manifests.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy. So I would like to take it back to, I guess, I guess maybe this spiritual aspect of when you started to realize, wow, these people don't give a shit about me and all this stuff. Like how, I guess, and we'll get into the Chinese medicine world, but how did you, I guess, and at first you were in victim mindset, which is a natural thing to do. We're all in the process of becoming more and more aware. But how did you deal with it mentally, and what were some big realizations, and how did you work through them?
Yeah, so basically my experience of going straight into victim mindset of like what what did I do to deserve this? I thought I was a good person, right? Why are all of these people around me disrespecting me? Why is my partner that I thought loved me betrayed me? And I just had all of these questions. I also had friendships where like I got sick and all of a sudden no one wanted to hang out,
Come
right?
on.
I just was like, the universe was literally being like,
F you.
but yeah, literally, look at all these people around you. And I first of all went into victim mindset, and then I noticed two things. So I like went back to my childhood and realized that like I had a massive issue with having to be liked, just like having to be liked because then I felt of value. And the old saying of like you could be the ripest peach, not everyone's gonna love peaches. I could never get my head around that. I was like, surely if I'm just a nice, good people should like you, right? So
So
that was
people pleasing in a way.
yeah, like people pleasing, like having to be liked and like if someone didn't like you, it was like I never understood the idea of like it's a reflection on them, not a reflection on you. I just would always be like, but I'm a good, likable person, right? And
Yeah.
it all came down to basically like lack of self-worth and self-confidence to be able to like know my worth and not need that validated by other people. And that was like the first thing, which then played into modeling of like validation from others, validation
Yeah.
from agents, validation from like society and whatever. So I basically went through a whole spiritual kind of like expansion of realizing that like I was getting all of my worth from the validation of others. And like my worth was also my exterior, which I've never valued myself that way. Like growing up, I never like really valued myself on like what I looked like. And then all of a sudden in modeling, it was almost like all of my insecurities from childhood of like wanting to people please, wanting to be liked, like all of these things. Then you add it to only being of value because of your appearance. And it was just like a recipe for like an absolute complete mental breakdown, which it was.
Yeah.
But in that process, I was able to unravel like where these things came from. Why was I a people pleaser? Why did I feel like I had to be liked? And like, why did I need validation from others? And what it forced me to do was go inward. And I kind of call it through my work now, it's called like returning home to your body. And like, that's my whole message. Is it forced me to go inward and return home to myself and rewrite those stories. So like teaching myself again that like people don't like you, okay, that's cool. As long as you're in your truth, it doesn't matter. Like if
How,
you're in
how'd you pull it out? Was it journaling? Was it meditation? Was it just a lot of time by yourself?
I'm a very like self-aware person. I feel like my whole life I've been a very sensitive person. I just purely hit rock bottom
Yeah.
and I just sat in my shit. And I just literally like I'm not even gonna say I meditate for hours because I didn't. I just sat in my shit and was like,
God.
okay, I'm depressed. I am at rock bottom. This is not the person I know myself to be. Why am I this way? And what are the patterns I see in my life? And I literally started writing down like all the patterns I see in my life. And it was like wanting to keep this person happy, wanting to make sure that like I didn't piss people off, not wanting to speak up and like cause any drama or any problems, right? It was just all of these things that came down to like wanting all of my validation to be from people liking me and me being of worth to them instead of like, why am I not of worth to myself? Right.
Yep. People pleasing, I've learned, is a trauma response. And, I see a lot of people in my life, and me to an extent. I like to say I'm a reformed people pleaser, but I'm not totally reformed. Where did, and it all stems from some of our childhood. Where did you find it linked from?
Yeah. Well, mine was kind of from, it was a mixture of school and home. Like at school, I was really badly bullied and I could never understood like why people just didn't like me. And
Yeah.
as an adult, I can kind of I can see it now because I'm like, okay, yeah, I was like 12 years old and looked like I do now. And I think it
Yeah.
was uncomfortable for a lot of people. I feel like I was very sexualized at like a young age because of the way that I looked. And I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be liked. I just wanted to fit in. I was like very smart at school. So the last 2 years at school, I got so badly bullied up until then. I just like literally disappeared, started wearing basically boys' clothing and hanging out with the
Oh,
teachers. Yeah.
that's
I
so
just
sad.
like
You just want to be a
I
kid.
I just wanted to like be right. And I realized like that was a lot of it came from school. And then I had a great upbringing and an incredible family, but I think there was a lot of aspects of like wanting to kind of like keep the peace,
Yeah.
right? And wanting to just everyone to be happy and wanting to keep everybody happy and feeling like that was my like job. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like unraveling that, and that was a lot of inner work. And I do say I think it took me to like get to rock bottom for me to have like all of this awareness show. And at the time, if you had been like, you're gonna look back and this is gonna be the best thing that ever happened to you, I would have sworn at you and like thrown something at you. But now I look back and I'm like, wow, this has built me into the woman I am today, that can stand on her own 2 feet and like believe in herself and like not, I genuinely don't need the validation from others. I mean, when we're on Instagram, of course, it's like it can be like this vicious cycle of like, are people connecting with this? Are people not? And like, but you have to be able to remove your own self-worth and your own, personal worth from like everything you're doing in the exterior world. So that was like a massive part, I think, of my kind of like spiritual kind of expansion. And then what was the other one we were talking about? People
There's
pleasing.
people pleasing, a lack of self-worth.
Yeah. That honestly, the best thing I did for my self-worth was to study something that was of value. So whether you're someone that like, I just believe that if we put all of our eggs in one basket, like we all have like one career, this is what we're good at. This is what we identify with. Like I am a lawyer. My worth is tied to being a really good lawyer. You know what I mean? It's like if we tie all of our worth to our job, it's like it's to me it's like a recipe for disaster. We have to
You're so
value,
right.
yeah, we have to value ourselves in so many different ways, because what if you aren't a lawyer one day? Or what if you have a really bad week at work? What if you lose that case, right? And all
Yeah.
of a sudden you're like, I'm a shit lawyer, therefore I must be like it plays into I'm.
Identity crisis. Yeah.
So the greatest thing I ever did for my own self-worth was honestly studying Chinese medicine. Not because it was like, oh, now you're good at something, that's where your worth is coming from. It's because I was like applying myself and it was giving me confidence to learn something else and to build value through kind of like passion instead of like the exterior, which was modeling, right?
Yeah.
So for other people, that might be like a hobby, like getting a hobby and like investing time in that hobby. Like that builds confidence because you're like, you're doing something that's hard, you're learning something that's new. All of these things build confidence. So one
Yeah.
of the best things I honestly did was like studying something that was outside modeling that I was passionate about. It built confidence in a really beautiful way. And then honestly, like it was not an overnight thing. It's been years and years and years of like being so self-aware of when I'm triggered, because I still will get triggered to this day.
You're a human being.
Yeah, for people that like whatever, a brand will say something or a modeling agent will say something, whatever, right? And you'll feel that awareness of that trigger coming up. But that's what's so cool. Like that's growth is when you feel it. Because
When you
previous,
feel it and you observe,
and you just
it's
like sit with it and you're like, okay. Whereas previously I would have just reacted and got upset.
100%.
Okay, I'm going through this experience again. I can feel myself spiraling into that place I used to go to, but we're not going there because like we do not value ourselves like this anymore. And you just kind of like have to have that awareness and like cut it off before you start spiraling into those patterns you used to go in. And it's almost like, yeah, like cutting the thread.
It's
So,
funny.
yeah.
I was having a conversation last weekend. I like to get into like these existential spiritual conversations. And this is the most aware I've ever been in my life. Obviously, just like everyone, I have miles to go. But I've been observing more versus like reacting, same thing. But I say self-awareness, I think is the biggest cheat code, the most important tool that you could have. And if you really think about that statement, it bleeds into everything.
Yeah, it's self-awareness is the work.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, I'm trying to unravel these trauma responses and these patterns from my childhood and, these kind of like thoughts and beliefs that I hold that like I don't want to hold on to anymore. And like we're not just gonna wake up one day and done our meditation and they're gonna be gone from our system. I just like don't believe that's how it works. It's truly just having the self-awareness, which is the entire goal to experience when these things show up as they show themselves and being able to, like you said, observe them, see them for what they are,
Yeah.
like let them go. And as you do that, and the more you do that, the less they show themselves because they know that they aren't welcome. And we're through that constant repatterning, we're changing those beliefs in real time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Totally. So I love that you have multifaceted passions. I guess that's the right word. But I would like to touch on the one directly behind you.
Yeah.
So, let's get more into, okay, so you're at rock bottom, you're depressed, you're upset, you're sorting through everything, victim mindset, you're desperate, you'll try anything. You find this guy in the Palisades. Take us through the process of your health journey from him, with him or her, from start to finish.
Yeah, so I met Tony, who is a good friend of mine now. She's a wonderful Chinese medicine practitioner. And basically I was at rock bottom. And this is the thing with Chinese medicine is people end up coming to me as their last resort because they've tried everything else. And that's exactly what I did, right? I tried everything else and I was like, I am not into this like woo-woo medicine, but I'll give it a go, right? I was a skeptic. I really was. And she knows because we laugh now because, we chat a lot about herbs and this and that, and I'm the biggest advocate. And she
Nerds.
remember, I feel like patients are so annoying when they're asking about like every herb and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, you did that to me. And I'm like, it's true. Um, and
Wow, called out.
yeah, I was the worst. I was like, where's
Okay,
the herb
Tony.
from? Like, what does it do? Like, is it going to affect this? Like, whatever. So, I met with Tony. I had like cystic acne, really bad rosacea. I lost half my hair. I had chronic gut issues. I'd just taken 12 rounds of antibiotics to even calm.
Damn.
I had like an active infection that was like open in my breast. I had just like all like
Well,
interstitial lymphoma.
let's talk about what you didn't have.
Literally, like it was just like it was everything. And then I got a note from my doctor saying that I basically needed to go and see an endocrinologist. So I went and saw an endocrinologist, and I'm like 22, and they're like, "Yeah, like your results basically say that you're infertile." And I just
And
was like,
why did they say that?
literally because all of my sex hormones were so low. They were like,
And what were they testing for? They were just testing because you were so sick and pulling up your levels.
they were just trying to see what my hormones were doing because I was such a mess and everything was just like rock bottom. And they were like, you're infertile. Now I would look at that, I'd be like, no, I was adrenal, massively adrenally depleted. But they were just like, you're infertile. So my 22-year-old self is like, what? Like, this is the worst news you could have given me, right? And it just scared the absolute crap out of me. But then I was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't believe it. A year ago, I was healthy. I'm not buying into this. And anyway, I saw Tony and she was like, no, you're good. You just like, we have to bring things back into balance. And I was like, okay.
The chi.
The chi, Georgia, the chi and the blood. And yeah, like 3 months later, I started to feel like myself. I just felt lighter.
So
And
did she pull blood tests from you?
no, so we basically Chinese medicine, to give everyone a little bit of context, our diagnostics are completely different to Western medicine. And this will be the same if you go to a Chinese hospital that practice traditional Chinese medicine. We have a completely different diagnostic tool to Western. We're not looking at bloods, like it's irrelevant to us, basically. We're looking at basically we'll ask you like 100 different questions that are very specific to things that we need to understand. We look at the body as patterns of disharmony, not disease. So we look at the
I
body as,
like that.
yeah, so we're like, here's this pattern in Chinese medicine diagnostic. It might be like liver Qi stagnation or like phlegm stasis or like all these different things that we have names for. And it's like, okay, this channel is imbalanced. If we bring it back into balance, the disease goes away, right? So we don't really believe in disease as
It's
such,
all
and
energy and
it's
it's
all
energy
like
flowing.
energy and substance, right? So we're basically going to look at, like, we're going to ask you a bunch of these questions, and that's going to give us an idea. Then we're going to feel your pulse. Your pulse on your right and your left side is going to show us different organ systems, your heart, your lungs, your liver, your gallbladder, your kidneys. It's going to show us all of it. Something called the Sanjiao, which is the pericardium as well. So these are all different kind of like channels, organs, meridians in the body. We're going to read your pulse. We're going to look at your tongue, because your tongue is the only muscle
Yes.
in our whole body that we can see, right? So that's going to show us really like what your muscles look like. And it's also going to show us your tongue is an inverted, basically like from the waist down, like epigastrum, all the way down to kind of like your ovaries and your kidneys. So if we look at the tongue, we can see the liver, gallbladder, which represents the outsides. We can see the heart at the tip, then the lungs, the spleen, stomach, and then at the very back of the tongue, where a lot of people have quite a thick coating, we're seeing like the intestines, the kidney, the intestines, the bladder. And then we're looking at the color of it, the cracks that are on it, all these different things that are giving us information about the body. We also look at the ears. So like you can see different meridians on the ear, but
Oh,
the
you
out
have cute ears. They're so round.
so little.
Yeah.
We can kind of see the intestine meridians, and then we're also going to be like looking at your face, looking at your skin, and kind of like putting all the pieces together. We also sometimes look at blood pressure, also kind of your wrist as well, your veins, that can tell us a lot of things, in your palms. So we're basically more so looking at like your temperature and these other diagnostic tools, and that's how we're understanding the patterns of disharmony in the body. So if you were to study Chinese medicine in China, it would be like a 7-year degree, like Western medicine. It's really, really interesting. Yeah.
Wow. I just had like this weird realization. Back in the day, like the Mayans, the Incas, they mapped out our whole solar system from the naked eye. Like, how did they do that? And if you think about it, we are galaxies. Like, our gut microbiome has trillions of microbes. In a weird way, Chinese medicine is the same thing. That we're mapping it out based on certain signs and symptoms. So I feel like that's like kind of like a
100%.
weird parallel.
It's a 7,000-year-old system of medicine. So it's the longest documented medicine in the world, and Western medicine's been around for 100, maybe 150 years. So it's just what's so fascinating, what I'm so grateful for the ancestors and the traditional wisdom of Chinese medicine and all the families that have passed it down. I'm just so thankful for all the documentation that they kept, and like all of the history and all of the information. It's so rare to have that. And then to the people that translated it into English, I feel like so blessed to have been able to have that access and learn kind of. I feel like I could literally study TCM for the rest of my life and never finish.
Wow,
It's
that's
crazy.
incredible. So on your journey with everything, sorry, there's like a man that just like won't leave in front of my house. Anyways, so with everything on your journey, what kind of stuff did Dr. Tony do for you specifically? How did she address things like your rosacea, your candida? Was it all herbs? Did he change your diet? Was there certain practices you took on?
Yeah, so there's nutrition is always part of traditional Chinese medicine. So Chinese food therapy is always a part of just
Sounds
what
great.
it's great. So basically they would say you have a spleen qi deficiency. Let's just throw that out there. Or liver qi stagnation. They're going to tell you certain foods that are good for like that pattern to help that pattern, right? And foods that are bad for that pattern. So I altered my diet a little bit. The main thing that we noticed with my diet that it was very, in Chinese medicine, it was very cold. So I was eating a lot of like fruits, acai bowls, smoothies, juices, like all of these cold things and salads. And I'm like, it's healthy though. And she's like, yeah, but you have spleen G deficiency and weak digestion. And when you eat too many cold foods, it lowers the temperature of the digestive process, our stomach fire. That's what creates all of our enzymes. That's what protects us from infection. That's what helps you start digesting our food. you're just knocking that out every single time and putting cold into the digestive system. The spleen and the stomach likes to be warm. And what that does is it kind of like slows down our whole digestive process. That's how we start getting SIBO, we start getting overgrowth because food is sitting in the intestines for too long. Slows down the peristalsis. So now we're either getting loose stools or we're getting constipated. And like this is kind of the most simple things that people don't really understand. And I was eating so many cold foods. So when we say cold, we're actually talking about like the thermal properties of food themselves. So not necessarily eating like hot food. It's kind of like looking at, okay, if we're having like cucumbers and lots of greens and lemons, these are all very cold foods, right?
Yeah.
Salads, very cold, and we're talking about the thermal properties here. Whereas like warm foods would be seen as like, for instance, like eggs and chicken and mushrooms, like these things are much warmer for our digestion. Ginger, these kind of things are going to be like warming and stimulating for the digestion. So that was the first thing that we noticed was I was like, in Western terms, I'm eating super healthy, but my digestive system sucks. And she's
Yeah.
like, this is why, right? So I started incorporating like a lot more warmer foods. I got really into bone broth. I've been having bone broth
Go
for like
girl.
years. Honestly, it really started helping. There you go. And then yeah, I like completely switched my diet. I also was like kind of vegan pescatarian at the time too, which just wasn't personally working for me. And I kind of changed that up, and that really, really
Also,
helped.
I'll shut my mouth.
Yeah, I'm like that really helped. And then in Chinese medicine, we always say consume the organ that you want to heal. So for me, like
Oh, wow.
I was going through like a lot of imbalance with like my liver. So I started consuming like beef liver, and like that was a huge
I love
change for
this.
me. It was so helpful. And then we also went into the skin and we were looking at like foods that can
Why
help.
the liver? She isolated your liver as a big part of the issue pertaining to what which one of your ailments or multiple?
Yeah, so part of that was because I was on birth control for 10 years. So I came off birth control.
Georgia.
I know. I came off birth control, chronically stressed, had breast issues, had eye issues. So the liver meridian, it runs through our breasts, our armpits, and the liver opens into the eyes. So we can see eye issues is usually liver issues. So I was having lumps in my breast. So we're seeing a lot of stasis in the liver, right? So what happens when we experience a lot of anger, a lot of resentment? That is associated with our liver. Our liver kind of stores our anger and our resentment. And I was filled with resentment. Oh my gosh, I was so resentful. And I was
And is that
angry
where rosacea comes from?
and I felt betrayed. So we can talk, I'll tell you rosacea in like 2 seconds, right?
Okay.
I was like angry and resentful, and like that was why my liver was overburdened. When the liver is like filled with those emotions, it becomes constrained. And when it becomes constrained, it usually gets hot. And what happens with that is the liver, when we bleed with our menstruation, we're not just bleeding blood from our veins. The liver lets down blood to allow us to bleed for our menstruation. So now we're getting menstrual issues because our liver's hot. And maybe we're getting clots, maybe we're getting more pain, maybe we're getting a lot of PMS. So she was looking at my liver being like, okay, your liver pulse is telling me that your liver is overworked and it's overstressed. You have the lumps in your breast. I had fibrocystic breast from when I was 14. You have diminished vision, you have blurry vision, you get sore eyes, you get red eyes, you get gunk in your eyes, all of these things, right? And I had chronic like lymphatic swelling. And she's like, it's all liver. So we kind of started on the liver, and that was really where it started shifting my emotions. And the first part of
From
our process,
doing the Chinese medicine work, it started stirring up emotions.
so the Chinese herbs. So that was kind of the first step of the process, was to really start shifting emotions. We didn't even really get heavy into my skin until later. We really started just like moving the liver energy, cleaning the liver out, and like helping me process this emotion with the herbs. And that was when it started feeling like myself. And then we kind of moved
Wow.
to the skin. But in that process, the skin started improving because the liver was more like relaxed and moving more freely.
This is so cool. I'm like mesmerized right now. That's
Yeah.
so cool. Cause to me, I said it in the part of my health journey where I realized like there's like a lot of like emotions stored and trapped. It's incredible that Chinese medicine actually kind of like stirs it up, I guess, and helps process it.
Totally, but you have to be really careful of like who's ready for that. You know what I mean? Like when you're really starting to like dredge and move the liver, for instance, if someone has PMS or they get some pain around ovulation, um, that's all signs that their liver is constrained and needs moving. But every now and then you'll move that and people are like, I feel amazing. Every now and then you'll get someone that you'll move that and they'll just be like, I'm anxious and like all over the place because they're not ready to like process, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, breathe through it. Like you gotta just go with the herbs, keep taking the herbs, keep taking the herbs. But sometimes what I say is like people will take like a few doses and they'll feel things moving and they'll be like, I don't want to take it anymore. But now you've poked the bear, right?
Yeah.
You've got to keep moving the bear. So I'm like, no, 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 take the herbs, take the herbs. And then within a couple of days, they feel good. But every now and then you get someone that's like, their body's not quite ready to start
The
shifting
end of
their
the day, though, you got to face yourself at some point. Otherwise, you'll never get
totally,
better.
totally.
But you're
So
right. People are at different stages of awareness and healing.
totally. And you have to meet them where they're at. So that was that. And then the rosacea I mean, there's kind of four different routes for most people with rosacea. It can be that their blood's running hot. And that's usually people that have like that's the deepest level of our body. So we can see in Chinese
Oh.
medicine, you have rosacea. Oh, so we can
Not for
see
long. I'm going to get into Chinese medicine.
you're like, hey. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we can see like different levels in the body, and I won't go through them, but there's the outer level, the interior level, and then there's kind of this blood level. We call it Jue Yin, right? And what that basically means, it's the deepest level of our body. And that's where like we've been holding on to things for a long time, or we've gone through like a lot of traumas, or we've been dealing with, infections or whatever for a very long time. It's the deepest level of the body, right? And that's where sometimes the blood, when it's exposed to these different things, whether it's emotion or it's trauma or it's infections, whatever, the blood can get hot. And sometimes when the blood can get hot, that's when we can see skin issues like psoriasis or rosacea starting to like bubble up and show themselves. And usually with people, there's like a trigger with rosacea, like it just shows up one day after something
Yeah.
happening. Yeah.
It showed up for me. I've categorically never done well with birth control. I've barely been on it in my life, but I went on it for 3 months, got off of it, rosacea.
Yeah. That's like super
And
common.
it stayed. It's still here.
You're like, can you not?
Can you leave with the birth control? Thanks.
Yeah, so there can be kind of that, but there also can be like heat in like the lungs and the stomach. So people, when they eat and the rosacea gets triggered, usually there's heat in the lungs and the stomach. So the lungs govern our skin. So people like don't really realize that, but in Chinese medicine, the lungs govern the opening and the closing of the pores. It governs like the strength of our qi, which is kind of our outer aura, which protects us from infection, etc., and viruses. Our lungs are governing all of that. So if there's heat in our lungs in Chinese medicine, we can see heat coming through on the skin. If we have heat in our stomach will kind of always okay, so if there's a dynamic, the spleen energy is meant to go up, the stomach energy is meant to go down. And when our stomach gets too hot, it starts going up and we see it in the skin and it's always the cheeks.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting when you kind of dive into it and you're like, wow, these people like knew this 3,000 years ago.
Crazy. And it's, in my opinion, I mean, you're saying it has one that's flow, one that's flow down. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
energy. It's all energy and
Mm-hmm.
movement of that energy. So when you fix your rosacea, like I assume just that you eat healthy, but do you stay on a strict regimented diet that calls to your healing, or are you just more mindful when you eat, but still, you know,
Yeah.
party
Well,
with chicken parm sometimes?
yeah. When I was healing, I'm a big foodie and I've always loved food. Like my biggest problem was overeating. I just like love food. And um kind of when I was on my rosacea mine was pretty intense and rosacea typically takes quite a long time to completely calm down. And the reason for that is it's usually very like deeply kind of in the level of the body. It's quite deeply kind of rooted. So mine took like honestly 3 years to completely clear.
Wow.
So I
And it's
had
not come back since.
no.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So for the first year, it was lesser severity. So I had it less. The second year, I had it not at all, but I'd get flare-ups. And then the
Yeah.
third year, it would show up like it showed up maybe 3 or 4 times that year with like emotional stress or like things that I was doing, right? So it's kind of like a progression, and that's the thing with skin stuff. And a lot of that was because honestly, I didn't do as much emotional work as I should have. I think the last 15% of my rosacea, and I talk about this in one of my YouTube videos, was really I did all the herbs, and there was kind of 15% that was still stuck there. And I was talking to Tony, and I just was like, I just don't understand. Like it's gone, and then but it'll just show itself every now and then. And then I realized, and we'd done everything, and I was like, it's down to me now. Like this is truly down to me.
Yeah.
And it really was. I started working with a kinesiologist in Australia, um, and like working through things with her, and we were working through birth trauma.
Birth
And
trauma.
yeah,
Oh, like when you were born.
yeah. So she was like unraveling a lot. She's really amazing. And we ended up just working through like a bunch of birth trauma.
On Zoom or?
No, like in person.
Wow.
I was in Australia and we were working together and we like moved through some birth trauma and then also some other trauma from a previous relationship. And literally my rosacea just like never came back.
Stop. And was this all like talk therapy or what kind of stuff did you do to
Yeah.
release that emotion?
This was kinesiology. So basically, with kinesiology, she holds your energy in her body. So she was tapping into me, and you have to be really open to like, and you can't go in there and be a skeptic because that's
Yeah.
gonna close her out. I just went in like heart open, and we still work together now. I adore her. She's like a grandmother figure
On
to me.
Zoom now?
Yeah. And she basically holds your energy in her body for the session. And she uses different kinesiology tools to access what she needs to. And she feels into where in your body the energy is stuck. And she starts asking you questions. So she connects to source and then she basically asks you questions. She's kind of like a channel.
Wow.
And then we basically started moving things through things together. And I'd always felt like, and it still makes me emotional now, I'd always felt like I had a lump in my throat. Like I would talk about things and I would just get really emotional. Like even now I'm like, I remember this like moment and I would always get like really triggered. And even now, if people touch my neck, I don't like it. And I would be like, I just, I don't know. I feel like I can't express myself properly. Like I just feel like I have a lump in my throat always. And I was working with her and she's like, she comes up to my neck and she's like working with me. And she's like, you had a traumatic birth. And I just like burst into
Come
tears.
on.
And I'm like burst into tears. I'm like hyperventilating. And I'm like, she's like, it's okay. Like, you have to like move through this. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, you had the umbilical cord around your neck. And I was like,
Stop.
I know. And I was like, yeah, I like almost died. I was purple by the time I came
But
out.
did you know that or did you go back and ask your mom?
So I knew this. And she starts asking me, she's like, you had the umbilical cord around your neck. And I was like, yeah, I did. And I like burst into tears. And she was like, yeah, she's like, you feel like you're being choked and you're just like trying to come out into the world and like show yourself. And anyway, moral of that story, she like started like helping me like move through all the energy of that I didn't even know was there. I just knew that I didn't like people touching my neck, but I'd never really put the
Yeah.
two together, right? And she starts like moving through that with me, and I felt like this huge release of heat from like the upper part of my body just leave.
Wow.
Yeah, it
That's
was
so powerful.
super powerful. So there is a lot to be said for like all different modalities of healing. And if you can move through that stuff through self-awareness yourself, then that's great. But that just to me was never in my awareness.
I mean, who would have thought, right? I mean, something when you first came into this earth and it's true. Like we all have, this word traumas from somewhere, even if you've had a great life, like it was
Hmm.
literally during childbirth. So, and you're lucky you actually had that information. Whereas a lot of people, they might not even know what. But
100%. I never would have put the two and two together unless she had brought it up for me.
wow. And that was the final straw to getting rid of the rosacea, was this stuff kind of
It,
energy, trauma.
it was that, and then working through with my previous relationship, because my rosacea came on straight after that relationship.
Same with mine. I was with this awful guy, and it was the end of the birth control. It was all the
Yes,
same.
same. And we did that, and it was like so much better. And then we basically so we kept working together, and then she helped me release basically what she calls like hooks. So like my ex had like hooks in me. And the crazy thing is she was like, yeah, your lightness is what draws him to you. And I have to do this cord cutting. Like I have to like get his hooks out of you. And I was like, okay, so we did the whole process together. I'm not kidding. I hadn't heard from him in like a year. That night, I get a message on Instagram
You're lying.
after she
And
does the
how many years after did you do this cord cutting?
tour.
Shut up.
And the crazy thing is she literally said to me, she was like, he's gonna feel this, and I wouldn't be surprised if he like reaches out to you. And he literally DM'd me on Instagram.
You're kidding me.
No.
What'd you do? Delete, ignore?
I wrote a very kind with love message.
I love that.
It was basically like, if you invest some
You
energy
felt
into
that?
your life. Yeah, I just sent him love. And yeah, it's crazy. I'm so excited. I'm going to Australia for the whole of November, and I'm gonna go see her again because she's just the best.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
My brain right now is like so, something I would like to close on. You talk about this concept that I don't, concept's the wrong word, of pregnancy priming. And,
Yeah.
I think fertility is an extension of your health. So I would love for you to touch upon that. I think is really important for a lot of women out there to hear.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, sorry, that was just me throwing pens around. Yeah, it's something that for me, I guess, as 22 years old and being told like you're infertile by a doctor. Fertility is something that I've been thinking about since I was really young. Um, and part of that is not because I think it should just be, I don't know, it should just be how it is, but it's not. But we see fertility as our ability to have a baby, right?
Yep.
But our fertility is actually our greatest health marker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's telling us so much of what's going on with our health. That's why in Chinese medicine, we call the menstrual cycle like your fifth vital sign. Like it tells us the amount of information. Like yesterday, I'm on a Zoom with a girl and we're talking about her cycle. And I'm like, what color is the blood? How many days do you bleed for? How heavy is the blood? Do you have clots in your blood? Do you get pain before, in the middle, after? Like, do you get headaches? Like all of these things that coincide with our cycle, are
Damn.
telling us like everything about the way your organs are functioning, right? And that's the same with like our fertility. And I'm not saying that like, there's always a solution because you know what? Sometimes we're just like handed things in our life that are out of our control, right? So I'm not here saying that like, your fertility is going to tell you your health forever, but it is a diagnostic tool,
Yeah.
it's telling us so much about our internal well-being. So I kind of like came up with this idea of like pregnancy priming, not with a goal to get pregnant, but to prime yourself to being
Optimal health.
highest vibration, to optimize like your fertility, because then you're optimizing your whole being, period,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of the herbs that like we use in Chinese medicine for I don't know, where we're talking about like PCOS or we're talking about endometriosis or we're talking about like any kind of like fibroids, whatever. A lot of these herbs, they're working systematically. They're not just working on the fibroid or just on the PCOS, right? They're working systematically affecting like every organ, every meridian in our bodies. Like it's a whole person approach. So my idea of like this pregnancy priming is to prime the body, address the imbalances. So we're in like our best fertile state, whatever that looks like for each person, because we're all different, to really be in our highest vibration, whether we want to have a baby or not.
Yeah.
Because 22 years old and being told like, oh, you're infertile, you need to go see an endocrinologist
Same.
immediately.
So
And
many parallels.
literally, and being like, I got referred to urologists, like you name it, right? And being like, you're gonna have rosacea forever. Like you have lupus, you probably have Crohn's disease, like all of these labels. And I just was like, I'm a firm believer. Like if your body gets you into something, there's a reason. And my reasons were to unravel all the stuff we've spoken about today. But if your body can get yourself into something, I'm a true believer the body can get itself out. It just depends how willing you are to let go of the thing that has caused the disease, right? To let go of whether it's like the stress or the trauma or the food or the alcohol, whatever it is that's causing your disease and your pain and your discomfort. It's your commitment level to letting that go. And it's like your ability to just trust your body and trust the process. Like I'm a true believer. Like if we get ourselves into something, we truly can get ourselves out of it. But I
100%.
a lot of the time people don't give it the time that it takes. Like holistic medicine is not a pill. It's not a pill, otherwise it would be
No.
Western medicine. You know, it's
Literally.
it's a process, right? And it's trusting the body. And some people are ready for that, some people are not. But like moral of that story, it's really just like I've gone on a fucking tangent now, but
No, this is a beautiful tangent.
but like when it comes to pregnancy priming, it's like we're priming ourselves to have our highest fertility, whatever that is to you, because we're all bio individual, because that is going to be our highest vibration, our highest health for so long. We have suppressed our hormones, we have taken birth control, we have, used all of the chemicals that are all just like shutting down our hormones and being so toxic to ourselves. So to me, pregnancy priming is just like priming yourself for being in your highest vibration. And a side effect of that is you're super fertile too. You know what I
I
mean?
love that.
So yeah, it's like something I'm super passionate about and like looking into your minerals and your cycle and like how everything is really playing into your hormone health, your fertility health, like everything. So
I could hear the passion for what you do. It's really, really beautiful.
thanks. Yeah.
So, how could people work with you and how could people find you?
Mm-hmm. So you can find me at Georgia Gibbs _ on Instagram. My website is www.georgiamaygibbs.com. I work one-on-one with clients, but we do have a wait list. So that's something we're kind of moving through. I'm trying to figure out how being one person works with that.
I
It's
hear that they might clone people soon.
there you go. Um, so yeah, primarily I have some cool free resources on my website. I've got some ebooks and some workbooks just for some fun things to move through. I have a private community that's free, that we do sister circles and things to really create community and connection, which I think is a huge part of healing. But other than that, I'm on Instagram, so you're welcome to go and find me there.